Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So this video is in response to My Name is Josephine. She did a video entitled Why the Black Community is Poor. And in that video, she started off by attacking Black Lives Matter. She talked about how Black Lives Matter is focused on non-issues, issues such as microaggression and cultural appropriation. So I want to start off by responding to that. First of all, I think that's a mischaracterization of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is focused primarily on the issue of police brutality, and that is a vital issue in the community. That is an important issue. That is an issue that has been plaguing Black people since we arrived in this country. You have these police who kill Black people with impunity, and there is no justice. And often these killings are captured on videotape, and still there is no justice. So to suggest that Black Lives Matter is focused on non-issues is ridiculous. So that's the first point that I want to make. Now, her whole video is focused on the issue of income disparity and poverty in the Black community. And basically, this woman tries to absolve society. She tries to say that racism is not a factor, that racism doesn't play a role in these huge income disparities between Black people and other groups of people. Instead of blaming that disparity on racism, this woman blames it on high school dropout rates, college dropout rates, out of wedlock births, and crime. She says that those are the main reasons why Black people are not doing as well economically as other groups of people. I will post a link to her video in the description box so that you can watch it for yourself. But I'll just say this in response. Her naive analysis just leaves out key factors. And one of those key factors that cannot be ignored is 400 years of slavery and Jim Crow. For 400 years, Black people were denied the ability to build any kind of wealth in this country. In fact, we were property in this country. In fact, our labor was stolen from us. We were forced to work for others for free, from sunup to sundown without any kind of compensation at all. And they used that slave labor to build their wealth, to build their nation. They used the slave labor to build all kinds of different industries. So for hundreds of years, we were held back economically. And then after slavery, we were subjected to Jim Crow. After slavery, we were subjected to redlining and other discriminatory financial practices that made it difficult or damn near impossible for Black people to build any kind of real wealth. When you have redlining, that means that we were locked out of the housing market. We were denied the opportunity to build wealth through homes and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the reason why we have this huge income disparity and wealth disparity in this country. There's an article in The Nation magazine that points out how it would take 220-something years for Black people to reach the same amount of wealth that white people have without any kind of government intervention. I encourage you all to read that article. In the description box, I will include links to all of these articles so that you can read them for yourself. All of my sources. This is not just me spouting an opinion, it's based on fact. So Black people were held back for all these hundreds of years. And people expect Black people to compete on an equal level with a group of people who have had hundreds of years of time ahead of Black people in this race for equality, in this race for prosperity. It's like starting, a race, like participating in a marathon where your opposition has a long lead. They are given an opportunity to start the race, and you start the race a week later or days later or something like that. There is no way that you are going to compete in that race if you're not competing on an equal level. Not only do you start later than these other people participating in the race, they have placed all kinds of obstacles in your way to make it more difficult for you to finish on top, for you to finish in the even on a close to the other competition. So those are things that this naive young woman is not taking into account when she does her ridiculous analysis. Also, her analysis fails to take into account actual racism and discrimination that continues to this day. According to several studies, and I'll include the links again in the description box, Black people with the same level of education, with the same level of experience, with the same level of everything, still earn substantially less than their white counterpart. There is no other explanation for that other than racism. So to pretend like racism is not a factor, given that history that I cited and given that current reality, is absurd and just plain naive. And also in the description box, there's another article that talked about how, this woman mentioned crime and its impact on people's ability to find work and to build wealth and all that kind of stuff. Well, let's talk about that for a second. A white man with a criminal history has more opportunity than a black man with a criminal history. In fact, a white man with a criminal history or criminal record has an equal chance of getting a job as a black man without a criminal record. Again, I will include links to the sources proving this. So you can't pretend that racism is not a factor given that reality. And then let's talk about education. She talked about dropout rates and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, in this society, there are huge disparities in the education that people receive. In poor communities, you have poor schools. You have under-resourced schools. You have less qualified teachers. Plus, you're dealing with the conditions of poverty, which makes it more difficult for a student to focus on their studies, to focus on excellence in academia. All of those factors make it less likely for a black student to graduate, and even when they graduate from high school, they have a greater challenge going to school, going to college, getting the funds to attend college, and even when they get into college, because they have received an inferior education, it makes it more difficult for them to compete and for them to complete college. And then there are a host of other factors. So a lot of students, black students, end up dropping out of college because they don't have the financial resources to continue to pay for their tuition. All kinds of things happen in their lives. There's not a supportive system to encourage these students from these struggling communities to finish their education. So all of these factors come into play. Now, I want to address this last point, and that's this point that she raised about Nigerians, for instance. She said, well, racism can't be a factor because Nigerians earn, I think she said, more than whites or equal to whites or whatever. And, since Nigerians earn all this money, then race can't be a factor because, she's basically saying, well, are they discriminating against black people based on region and all that kind of stuff? And then she also mentioned the fact that Asians, for instance, earn more than whites and all that kind of stuff, to suggest that somehow that racism isn't a factor in these wealth disparities. And in response to that, I'll just say this. I mean, most of these Nigerians who immigrate to the United States or other foreign groups that come here, they are not the poorest of those societies. Often they are the people who have the means to pay for transportation. They have the means to get to the United States. They have certain resources. Many times they come from educated families. So they already come here with a set of skills. They come here with a set of resources. Often that's the case. They don't just come here penniless for the most part. And also, this society is more supportive of these immigrant groups in terms of them being able to obtain loans for businesses and all that kind of stuff. So there's a multitude of different factors that come into play. And these other groups, they don't face the same kind of problems that black people face. They don't have the same experience as black people. Black people in this country were held in bondage. We were stripped of our identity, stripped of our cultural identity, stripped of our names, our language. We were stripped of our dignity and our humanity. So to compare us to these other groups of people who have their cultural identity in place and all that kind of stuff, it's just not a fair comparison. It's just not an accurate comparison. It's not a good comparison given the fact that often these immigrants come here with various resources and they come here with a game plan on how to prosper in this society. And they haven't been held back for 400 years like the African American has. So I think that these people are missing the point. And to look at black people and just try to blame their condition on laziness or cultural values is just ridiculous. That's analogous to comparing the plight of the African continent to Europe or something like that. Basically trying to blame the people in Africa for their condition without considering the legacy of colonialism that helped to underdevelop Africa and made Africa dependent upon the West. You can't look at the current condition of Africa without looking at the history of colonialism and slavery. And the same is true here in America. You can't look at the condition of black people without looking at the history of Jim Crow and slavery, redlining, and all other forms of discrimination that continue today. So those are my points. I look forward to hearing your feedback. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and donate. Peace.